evening, everyone. Welcome to the American Sports Connection. I'm your host, the one and only Joey Railroads. I am going to be flying solo tonight because my co-host Ryan Ennis had a family emergency come up on him in the last couple hours that he had to handle. So you're stuck with me tonight. Before we get started on everything, don't forget to find our social media pages on facebook.com/American Sports Connection, or you can find us on Twitter at AM Sports Con, CON Pod, POD. And you can also find our stuff on B Plus Player Radio, which the best way to access that stuff you can find at Mark Adam Haggerty. That's a tongue twister for me for some reason. On Twitter, he puts up all of B Plus Player Radio's content. You can find him on Twitter at B Plus Radio, all one word. Also, let me not forget, before we get going, to thank our lovely sponsors over at the Squared Circle magazine. I wanted to make sure I got it correct. You can also find them on Twitter at TSC Wrestling Mag, MAG. Go over there and use promo code ASCPOD on any of your stuff when you're shopping, and you will get 20% off your order because they're so kind to help us out. All right, now that I got that long diatribe done, this week in wrestling, I know there was a lot of news, if people didn't see it, about Paige. Apparently, she had tweeted out a photo of either her at the Performance Center or going to the Performance Center. Apparently, she was getting checked up with her neck. She's close to being medically cleared, from what I understand. There was a lot of rumors going on that she's probably going to be on the SmackDown roster potentially, because I know Asuka is already set to be on the Raw roster, could actually even be on there as soon as Sunday night at the pay-per-view. I'm kind of leaning more towards their October pay-per-view. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. It would seem more likely with her injury. And the way WWE usually works is if Raw gets a new person, then SmackDown gets a new person. It kind of seems how they usually do it. So I think it'd be interesting, actually, to kind of have Paige 2 on there with Charlotte, Becky, Natalya. It could pose for some interesting matchups if she's actually motivated and not wanting to just be a gigantic pain in the ass, which she's known to be at times, unfortunately. I'm kind of surprised that they're actually going to put her back on television with the whole, stuff that's been going down with her, but they have the film with her life. I think The Rock has something to do with it. Like he's a executive producer, or he's a producer, or I don't remember exactly. But I know WWE wants to keep her around at least for that film, because they don't want any publicity if she were to get released by them. It's almost a certainty that GFW or Impact Wrestling, or whatever you want to call it, would pick her up because of Alberto El Patron there, and they could kind of piggyback off the publicity of this movie about her life. So in a lot of ways, WWE is just keeping her there to keep her away from other companies not getting some mainstream press with that film. That's really all the exciting news that I know of off the top of my head. So I'm just going to get right into wrestling this week with Raw. Wasn't very exciting. I will say the triple threat match they had with triple threat tag team match, with Gallows and Anderson, Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins, and Cesaro and Sheamus was really good. I thought it didn't really start out the greatest, but as it went along, it really picked up. I thought it showed what all three teams can really do if you give them time. I think WWE has really wasted an opportunity with Gallows and Anderson and kind of turned them into a joke. I mean, I have to say, I know there's probably a lot of people that don't like it. I like the thing with Luke Gallows when he tells people that they're nerds. That's just the old school Revenge of the Nerds kind of reference that I enjoy. Bayley came back, which was kind of interesting in itself because I didn't think she would be back so soon, and they kind of threw her right into this women's title match, which I don't even know if Emma's still in it or she's going to be, and it honestly just looks like a giant cluster. And I'll get to my predictions a little bit later. Me and Mark did one earlier in the week, but I'll give you my thoughts specifically on this show. Wasn't a fan of a quick Alexa Bliss Nia Jax match that only led to all the girls basically beating up on Nia Jax at the end with Bayley, Sasha, and Alexa, and they show all the other girls that are in the match except Emma, which was kind of weird in itself. I'm trying to remember the video stuff they did with Brock and Braun was okay, but it's just, I guess, because they've done so much to like build this up, the last little like interview is just kind of like it was okay, but it wasn't like terrible, but it wasn't great. I did enjoy Braun destroying Enzo. My God, if you didn't see it, go check out the choke slam that Braun Strowman gave Enzo Amore. It was like one of the most vicious landings I've ever seen on a choke slam, and he basically did it one-handed because he's so goddamn strong. That dude is ridiculously strong. It's like scary. I'm really not a fan of 3-hour Raws, and they're kind of just, I know it's the go-home show, they're just kind of trying to hang on by a thread to keep like Monday Night Football fans away from watching Monday Night Football. As I take a sip from my Burger King cup, I'm a Monday Night Football fan. I still watch Monday Night Football. I'll channel surf because I'm in fantasy football, and if I got players that are on Monday night, I'll be keeping an eye on them. Hell, I'll even admit it. If my team is playing on Monday night, I'm not watching Monday Night Raw. I'm usually DVRing it, or I'm going to watch the Hulu shortened version, the next day or after the game's over, if it's something that's interesting enough. The Roman Reigns promo, I think it was okay to end this kind of like for the go home to, sell the match. Cena, from what I understand, was already determined he wasn't going to be there due to a prior commitment, hence Braun destroying him last week. I just don't think Roman carried this well on his own. And I know, because Mark had talked about this, you go out there in front of 10 or 15,000, however many people it is in the arena, and try to cut a promo is very difficult. And absolutely it is. But whatever creative is giving him, and Vince McMahon, however they're doing it, at least in my opinion, is not working, or it's not appealing to me. And I think they've kind of, I don't want to say ruined him, but they've soured him on a lot of people. And I don't know if they're ever going to get him back to where they want to be, from where creative has really done him a disservice. And I kind of feel really bad for Roman, because he's gotten a lot better in the ring in the last 6 to 12 months. I thought he's improved a great deal. But right or wrong, he's always going to be looked at the Jack and the Beanstalk promo and the Suffering Succotash and all these other kind of goofy, silly things. I think he's held his own with Cena, because I've had conversations about this with other people. Cena really kind of, he's kind of killed him with these promos. Like, they were really, I guess you're like breaking down the fourth wall, like some people would say. Even Cena said it in one of them. I'm surprised they exposed Roman in a lot of ways with that. However, I don't think they were bad promos. Maybe they were just bad per se, because Cena is so good and like quick-witted with stuff, and that Roman would stumble or would just have to curse to try to get a reaction. That's what made it look bad. I think it's really hard to say. I think creative needs to try something different with him, and kind of maybe less is more with Roman, that he doesn't really need to say a lot, and just kind of be that menacing, I'm going to get you type of person, and just kind of short and sweet. He doesn't need to have a soliloquy or a 10-minute to 15-minute promo. The Bray Wyatt stuff with Dustin, or Goldust, or whatever you want to call him, is just kind of strange. I don't know where they're going with that. And then Baylor came out and kind of cut a promo for their match. It was just kind of bland. I don't know how they can spice him up too. I actually thought this match was going to be a gimmick match, him and Bray for the final time. But as I was told, and I'll never forget this, Mark, so thank you for this. When I think of this match, I will always think of the story Mark told with a Frenchman when he was in Canada last week. It's a man versus man match, which is the most absurd thing I've ever fucking heard. I thought they would just have like a hardcore match, or, you know, a cage or something that was like, I guess, to bring some finality to it, unless they're trying to get another match at the October pay-per-view, which I pray they don't, because I thought this feud could be really interesting, and it just is not done it for me. I thought it's just kind of fell flat and was really not good. I actually enjoyed the match with Neville and Gran Metalik. The problem is, if they established Gran Metalik as a legitimate force on that show and in the cruiserweight division itself. I think he could be a huge star because he can wrestle. He has a look that could be appealing to children with the mask. And, he was in the finals of the Cruiserweight Classic. This guy got a huge push, and then it just kind of went, bleh. Because I really like what he does. It's just, I think they're kind of clueless in general when it comes to the cruiserweights. The main event for me was just kind of flat 2 with the six-pack challenge, which eventually leads to Jason Jordan winning, which had Elias, the Hardys, Jason Jordan, Bo Dallas, and Curtis Axel in it. I thought it was kind of obvious that Jason Jordan was going to win, which to me, I don't know if people are like really interested or invested in Jason Jordan. I know he's had matches with Cena and Reigns on back-to-back Raws, but I just don't think people are buying him as legitimate, like with the whole babyface thing. They might have to, at some point, turn him heel, or I don't know if it's working. And going against The Miz, who's a really, really good heel, should probably be a world champion if he was still on SmackDown. I don't know if that's going to do him any favors, because a lot of the IWC are big Miz fans, so I think that might hurt him in a lot of ways. But that's just my opinion. Raw was not so hot. Moving on to SmackDown, wasn't that great either. I thought it was kind of cool, though, that Aiden English got a match with Randy Orton again. Even though he got beat, I thought it was one of his better showings in a one-on-one setting, especially against a more established guy like Randy Orton. Simon Gotch might have actually done him a favor. And then it was kind of cool to see Rusev come back and kind of squash Randy Orton immediately after the match and get a quick victory over him to, I guess, try and rebuild his stock in the company. I've always been a big Rusev fan. I thought he's been criminally underused. I know a lot of people have been talking about this, where Jinder Mahal kind of said a lot of things in his promo that you could deem racially insensitive to Asian people. I know the WWE had to issue an apology or something to the effect of their characters, and it's not meant to be taken seriously, which I tend to agree with. I mean, was it the nicest thing in the world to do? Not really. It was in pretty poor taste, but I don't know if it was so blatantly and like disgustingly racist within the confines of their show. But it really looks like they were like just grasping for straws on what to do with Jinder, because he's had some really god-awful promos the last couple weeks, like really bad in my opinion. AJ and Corbin I thought was not too bad. I wonder if they're eventually going to lead into a triple threat potentially, because of Ty Dillinger getting involved in this one again. Would eventually lead to Dillinger, Corbin, and Styles maybe at Hell in the Cell, or at a later date. I'm not really sure where they're going to go with that. I'm personally not a Corbin fan. He doesn't do it for me. But maybe, in the long run, he can prove me wrong. Let's see here. We had the New Day against the Hype Bros, which was actually not too bad. It was a pretty fun tag match. I think, though, Zach and Mojo would eventually be better off as singles guys. I personally think it's WWE's pet project to turn Mojo Rawley into the next like big thing, like John Cena or Roman Reigns. I think that's their long-term plan for him. I actually think he's a cool guy, a really good dude. He's actually super intelligent, but the gimmick they have him doing is just not something that would work for me. I don't personally care for it at all. The Dolph Ziggler stuff to me is just weird, where he's, you know, playing dress up and it's always a different character, like Triple H, and I just don't know where they're going with this. It's just kind of strange. It's almost like they're just turning Dolph Ziggler further into a joke before his contract expires, and then he probably retires and either leaves the company and goes and works somewhere else, or he retires and he goes into a backstage kind of role where he's like an agent, like Devon Dudley is. I will say the main event for SmackDown was really good. The Fatal 4-Way #1 contenders match for the women with Naomi, Becky Lynch, Tamina, and Charlotte, I thought was very good, with Charlotte eventually winning and going to challenge Natalya at Hell in a Cell, which reminds me, WWE is bringing Starrcade back. I believe it's the end of November, and it's going to be in it's not Greensboro, North Carolina, for the first time in 30 years, I believe, is what they said. And a lot of it is a bunch of cage matches they've already announced. I think one was like Shinsuke and Jinder. I know Charlotte and Natalya is another one. So that'll be interesting to see. I'm a big fan of the old WCW pay-per-views. I personally wish they would have already brought back War Games, which we've all heard is supposedly never going to happen. I'm trying to remember. Halloween Havoc. And I'm trying to... There's a couple others that were good ones. I know they've used Great American Bash. Those are the two right off the top of my head that stick out to me that I would like to see. Because that would be a cool Halloween kind of thing for, to bring Halloween Havoc back. I always thought it was fun. Because one of my earliest memories is, I think it was Halloween Havoc 92 with Jake the Snake Roberts versus Sting. Spin the wheel, make the deal. And it turned out to be the worst one on there. It was the coal miner's glove match, which ended with Jake getting bitten by his own cobra, which was not a very exciting match, to say the least. But that would still be cool to bring that back. Onward to 205 Live. 205 Live to me is kind of just, I know they had a good match with Cedric Alexander and the Brian Kendrick. These guys are working hard, but WWE has put them, I think, in such a hole, or kind of like behind the 8 ball, if you will, that I don't know if they'll ever be able to get out, and you probably won't see the Cruiserweights or 205 Live within the next, I'll say, 2 years. I hope I'm wrong. Which is another strange thing to me. I don't know why the Fashion Files, Breezango, are on 205 Live. It just seemed like a last-minute decision, like, hey, you're going to be on here now, and they make fun of, like, Drew Gulak almost every week, which is kind of weird. To me, one of the other guys that is criminally underused on this show is Noam Dar. This guy is super young, has all the potential in the world, and they put this guy in that stupid feud with Alicia Fox and Cedric Alexander, like fighting over his girl. That was him just, saying Alicia Fox in a funny way. And I don't know. I just wish they would let guys wrestle more, and instead of you have to do something like this and be in this storyline. You could kind of build something off later on, if that makes any sense. I'm just not a fan of those types of storylines. Him and Tozawa and Noam Dar had a good match. Just that I'm not happy with the way they use him. Enzo and Neville had a face-off, almost like a dance-off, I guess you would say, which was really bad. I know WWE's trying to get more eyes on the cruiserweights in 205 Live, but Enzo is just not really liked right now. If you saw Raw when Strowman destroyed him, a good portion of the crowd was chanting "Thank you, Strowman, for destroying him." And I really hope, and I don't know what they're going to do, but I really hope Enzo does not win the Cruiserweight title, because it could almost be like the death knell to that division and that belt to me if they put that on him. I mean, I understand why they would, but to me, it would just be really, really bad to do that. Let's see. Next, we're on to NXT, which was a interesting show in itself. I'm trying to find the results so I could pull them up again, because I remember it was a good show. Forgive me, everybody. I want to make sure. Here we go. Because I remember it off the top, but I just don't remember it exactly. I wanted to make sure I covered everything so that I don't miss something. Okay, yeah. We had Tino Sabatelli fight Johnny Gargano, which was in a good match that Johnny eventually wins. And I don't know if Tino Sabatelli is ever going to make it, but this was a good showing for him. They had a segment with Roddy Strong and Drew McIntyre that in 2 weeks they will be fighting each other for the NXT Championship. Let's see here. Oh, okay, yes. We have two of the Mae Young Classic competitors, Lacey Evans versus Bianca Belair, who Bianca Belair basically squashed, I thought, within 5 minutes or less. I mean, you could say it was competitive. Classic, she has yet to win a match on television, or you could even say be competitive in a match that you thought she would win, if that sounds fair. One thing I'll say was letting Aleister Black talk. You do not need to let the man talk. I think really need little. You don't need his. I mean, because they have plenty of time to get into why, you know, Alistair is the way he is, and et cetera, et cetera. But the Velveteen Dream eventually, and he gets a black mass almost, you know, that sends his mic flying. And Alistair sits right back down in the ring, which leads to Velveteen Dream kind of gold talkative way, which like makes everyone feel uncomfortable. Jose, which I thought was pretty damn good. Do his thing. I don't know what happened with No Way Jose, where he's just kind of a takeover a while back against Austin Aries, and I thought he kind of Aries, and he really kind of showed me something. And then after that, you really kind of haven't seen him as a single star. Kind of, he got pushed to the wayside, I guess, for all this other talent coming in. But you know, I thought he's been pretty good, but he's been relegated to doing jobs lately, or being in 6-mans or 8-mans on TV. And your main event was Tyler Bate and Trent Seven. Kyle O'Reilly really was good. Got to show off O'Reilly and Fish to the NXT audience. Cool seeing Total Elimination. To Sanity fighting Cole, O'Reilly, and Fish. Was really good stuff, which gonna eventually Adam Cole will fight Eric Young one-on-one, which should be interesting in itself. I always that's a match I think should be fantastic if given the right amount of time. All right, onward to Impact Wrestling, or GFW, or whatever you want to call it. We have Johnny. Let me make sure this is the correct week, because they tend to do this on me. Yes, that was the correct week. Okay, because I remember watching this. We had Johnny Impact, or Johnny Mundo, or John Morrison, or whatever you want to call him, wrestling KM in a #1 contenders match, which I thought was a pretty good match, which eventually leads to Johnny Impact beating KM and becoming the #1 contender for Eli Drake's belt. We had Taya Valkyrie winning another match and demanded a title shot. But first, Rosemary comes out to say you have to kind of get in line, and eventually turns into a giant schmoz with Taya, Sienna, and Tyron Tyrell. So eventually it turns into Allie and Gail Kim come out to even the odds, which leads to, I am assuming, eventually a six-woman tag at some point. The OVE, I got my tongue twisted tonight. OVE stuff with LAX where they hang out was kind of interesting in itself. But OVE will get another chance at the tag titles next week on Impact. So that should be really good, them and LAX. I've seen both of those guys on the independents, so if given time, they should have a fantastic match. They had another tag match with, and I'm going to try and pronounce this, Pagano and El Hijo del Fantasma versus Eddie Edwards and Ethan Carter III, that I thought was pretty good. And the AAA guys eventually get the win. And then later on in the night, we have another match with Johnny Impact, where he is wrestling in a #1 contenders match versus Texano Jr., who I'm not familiar with. And he eventually wins with the Starship Pain. So apparently Johnny Impact is now the #1 contender for another one of Impact's titles that I'm unaware of. Because I remember watching this, but it was like a giant cluster that didn't make sense. Because I'm trying to find here which championship it's for, because I don't remember. Let's see here. I'm going to keep looking for it. Oh, I'm mistaken. He had to win two times to be #1 contender. Excuse me. My apologies. Shows you how tired I am. And then your main event, we had Eli Drake fighting Bronce, Bronce, for the GFW World Title. Was a quick one where Eli Drake, almost you could call it kind of a squash match, that he eventually wins and retains his title. So I'm assuming Johnny Impact will be fighting Eli Drake either next week or in the very near future. I'll definitely check it out for OVE and LAX next week. That should be entertaining as hell. Let's see here. Now, before I get out of here, I'm going to go down through No Mercy, the card, myself, and give my thoughts and opinions on what I think might happen or where the matches might go. And I was right, Mark. They added a match. The pre-show match is Apollo Crews fighting Elias. I don't know if these two have had any interaction, but it just looks like a thrown together match. I will go with Elias because it seems like they kind of have a little bit of momentum and like think he's gonna do something. And because I haven't seen Apollo Crews wrestle a match in quite some time, so I'll go with Elias. Next we have The Miz defending his title with the Miztourage against Jason Jordan. I think The Miz is going to keep it. I really do, unless they really surprise me and go with Jason Jordan. I don't know if he's ready. I don't know if it's going to work. But that's just my thoughts. Fatal 5-Way for the Raw Women's title. Alexa Bliss defending against Sasha Banks, Bayley, Nia Jackson, Emma. I think Alexa keeps it. Unfortunately, I don't care really about this match. It just looks like one giant cluster, as I had told Mark. I think it's just a holdover till Asuka comes up, which could be that night or could be the next pay-per-view. I'm not sure. Next, we have Neville defending his Cruiserweight title against Enzo Amore. I'm hoping upon hope Neville keeps his title. However, I would not be shocked if Enzo wins it, because they're trying to get more eyes on the 205 Live and Cruiserweight product, and Enzo, like it or not, if he's liked or disliked, it's something people want to tune into from the way WWE's looking at it. But I'm going to go with Neville. Next, we have Finn Balor against Bray Wyatt. I would like to see Bray Wyatt win. I'm a big fan of Bray Wyatt. However, I think Finn Balor will eventually win, because I personally believe they have bigger plans for him. So this was kind of a, I guess, stepping stone, you would call it, for him to eventually on to bigger and better things, unfortunately, for Bray. Next, we have Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins defending their tag titles against Cesaro and Sheamus. I think Dean and Seth will retain, because if I remember correctly, Sheamus is supposed to be leaving to go film a movie soon. I'm not exactly sure when, but it's coming up, I believe, in the very near future. So Dean and Seth will probably retain. Next, we have the two big ones, John Cena versus Roman Reigns. And I know a lot of people are probably going to get angry, but I think Roman Reigns is going to win this one clean. The way they build it up makes me feel that Roman is going to win. And Cena, I don't think is going to be around, because he's got the Transformer movie coming up he has to film. I don't know when that starts, but it was this feud almost, it just felt like it's everything to get Roman ready to be the guy. And I had said this before, these promos were kind of weird with John Cena and Roman, because it almost felt like John Cena was his dad, like yelling at him, like, why can't you be better? Or it was like Vince McMahon, like, be better. This is what I want you to be. It just had like a super awkward, kind of cringy feel at times to it. But that's kind of how I felt. And the main event of the evening, Brock Lesnar defending the WWE Universal Championship against Braun Strowman. I personally would like to see Braun Strowman win. I don't know if Braun is going to be any hotter than he is right now. And I think you might want to try and jump on that chance, because I think you should try to kind of try something different, as opposed to what Mark had thought, that maybe they were going to go towards Roman and Lesnar again, which I have no desire to see. And maybe try something different with Braun running with the ball for a little while, and seeing if he can hang. However, I think in my heart of hearts that Brock is going to win, probably with a screwy finish, maybe. If Braun's not going to win the title, maybe somebody costs him the title, whoever's going to be his next feud. There's so many different ways you could go with this count out, DQ, with protecting both of these guys. But if you really asked, like, held a gun to my head, I would think Brock Lesnar is going to win. But I want Braun Strowman to win, as if that makes any sense. Like, I just... Brock doesn't do it for me anymore. His luster is kind of worn off. Doesn't really excite me anymore. I actually think Brock might be completely done when his contract's up. I think because he's 40 now, he doesn't really need... I mean, how much more money, good God, does the guy need? And with the health issues he's had with diverticulitis, that's something that you live with for the rest of your life, like causing you pain and issues. So I wouldn't be shocked if he walked away. But that's our show for this evening. I'm going to head out. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, give it a thumbs up, all that good stuff. And we will see you back next week. Have a good night, everybody.